If you were given a blank check to buy a classic European vehicle, your mind would immediately go to a vintage Ferrari, a sleek gull-wing Mercedes, or maybe an Aston Martin driven by a cinematic secret agent. But what if you absolutely hate going fast? What if you loathe personal space, despise modern safety features, and have a burning, unexplainable desire to look like you were driving a motorized shoe? Well, my friends, I have the perfect vehicle for you. Today we are exploring the majestic, terrifying, and completely absurd 1952 Felber Autoroller TL 400. But before we fold ourselves in half to fit inside this Austrian death trap, do me a quick favor. Smash that subscribe button, hit the like, and ring the bell. It takes absolutely 0 horsepower, and it helps us keep hunting down the weirdest, wackiest contraptions ever put on wheels. Let's rewind the clock to 1952. Europe is still dusting itself off from the devastation of World War II. Steel is an incredibly expensive luxury, gasoline is practically liquid gold, and people desperately need cheap transportation. They need something slightly faster than walking, but less exhausting than strapping roller skates to a hyperactive donkey. Enter Ernst Felber, an Austrian engineer who clearly stared long and hard at a motorcycle sidecar and thought, the motorcycle is just holding this thing back. The sidecar is a strong, independent piece of sheet metal that doesn't need a bike to validate its existence. And just like that, the Felber Autoroller was born. To call it a car is wildly optimistic. To call it a motorcycle is an insult to biker gangs everywhere. It is technically classified as a microcar, but let's be brutally honest with ourselves. It looks like a roller skate that mated with a wheelbarrow. If you parked this outside a bowling alley, someone would definitely try to put their left foot in it. The sheer audacity of its exterior design deserves a Nobel Prize in comedy. The Autoroller rides on 3 wheels. Now, historically speaking, 3-wheeled vehicles have a fantastic reputation for tipping over the moment someone sneezes too hard in the passenger seat. But Felber scoffed at the laws of physics. He put a single wheel in the front and 2 in the back, giving the vehicle the aerodynamic profile of a backward slice of Gouda cheese. There are no doors. Doors require hinges, and hinges are for people who care about keeping their shins intact. Instead, to get inside, you just sort of clumsily step over the side, like you're climbing into a remarkably small, slightly oily bathtub. And let us discuss the safety features, a conversation that will take roughly 3 seconds because there aren't any. Airbags? Nonsense. Seatbelts? Don't be a coward. Crumple zones? My friend, in the event of a crash, your knees are the front bumper. The bodywork possesses the exact same structural integrity as a damp croissant. I am fully convinced that getting rear-ended by a moderately motivated pigeon would result in this vehicle being declared a total loss by the insurance company. Beneath whatever you want to call the front of this contraption, sits the beating, wheezing heart of the beast. The 400 in TL 400 stands for engine displacement. It boasts a massive, earth-shattering 400cc Rotax engine. Just to put that in perspective, your neighbor's riding lawnmower probably has more displacement. This is a 2-stroke, 2-cylinder engine that churns out a blistering 14 horsepower. 14! You could literally buy 14 actual living horses, tie them to the front of this bathtub, and go much faster, although feeding them would absolutely ruin your fuel economy. Because it is a 2-stroke engine, it requires a precise mixture of gasoline and oil. This means that wherever the Felber goes, it leaves behind a glorious, choking blue cloud of exhaust smoke. You don't just arrive at the grocery store. You make a grand theatrical entrance like a 1980s professional wrestler stepping out of a fog machine. The sound is equally spectacular. It doesn't roar like a V8. It doesn't purr like a finely tuned V12. It sounds exactly like a blender full of angry hornets trying to puree a handful of gravel. It is a symphony of mechanical distress. We should probably talk about performance, and I'm using that word with the heaviest amount of sarcasm legally permitted. 0 to 60 miles per hour? No, just no, stop asking. It doesn't do that. 0 to 40 miles per hour? Eventually, yes, given a long enough runway, a steep downhill grade, and a hurricane-force tailwind, the Felber Autoroller might just touch its theoretical speed of around 50 miles per hour. But here's the secret magic of vintage microcars. 50 miles per hour in a modern luxury SUV feels like sitting in your living room reading a book. 50 miles per hour in a 1952 Felber feels like you are unprotected on the nose of a rocket re-entering the Earth's atmosphere. The wind is violently tearing at your face, the two-stroke engine is screaming in pure agony directly beneath your tailbone, the single front wheel is vibrating like a terrified chihuahua during a thunderstorm, and you are gripping the steering mechanism while aggressively praying to deities you didn't even know existed. It delivers a terrifying, pure adrenaline rush that a modern supercar simply cannot replicate without breaking several major traffic laws. Moving into the so-called interior, you'll find seating for 2 adults. However, let me be explicitly clear about this. You must be incredibly intimately fond of your passenger. There is absolutely no concept of personal space inside the Felber. You'll be rubbing shoulders, overlapping hips, and banging elbows. If your passenger had a garlic-heavy pasta for lunch, you'll know. If they breathe slightly too heavily, you'll feel it on your neck. It is the ultimate relationship crucible. If you and your spouse can survive a 20-minute drive in an Autoroller without actively plotting a divorce, your marriage is completely bulletproof. The controls are beautifully Spartan, which is a polite way of saying there's almost nothing there. You get a steering wheel that feels vaguely connected to the front tire by a series of old rubber bands and wishful thinking. There's a manual gear shifter that requires the delicate touch and sheer luck of a professional safecracker to successfully find second gear. As for the suspension, it's essentially comprised of the squishiness of the tires and the remaining cartilage in your spine. Potholes are your mortal enemies. Hitting a medium-sized pebble in this thing will launch you out of your seat like a poorly calibrated medieval catapult. Yet, despite the deafening noise, the toxic smoke, the terrifying lack of safety, the sheer ridiculousness of its shape, there is something undeniably, hopelessly magical about the Felber Autoroller TL 400. It stands as a hilarious monument to human ingenuity and our stubborn refusal to just take a walk. Ernst Felber looked at a devastated post-war economy and declared, "I will put these people on wheels, even if those wheels make them look like they are riding a sad carnival attraction." When you drive a modern car, you're completely isolated from the outside world. You have dual-zone climate control, active noise cancellation, and lane keep assist. You are safe, and you are profoundly bored. But when you drive the Felber, you are fully alive. You are an active participant in a daily survival mission. People don't look at you with bitter envy like they do when a Lamborghini revs its engine. They look at you with sheer, unadulterated joy. Small children point and giggle, old men give you enthusiastic thumbs up. Dogs bark at you in utter bewilderment. It is physically impossible to be in a bad mood while piloting a vehicle that closely resembles a mechanized potato. Imagine pulling up to a modern fast food drive-thru in this contraption. The speaker box is towering 2 feet above your head, the barista hands you an iced coffee, and you immediately realize you have nowhere to put it because cup holders hadn't been invented yet, and even if they had, there's no dashboard to attach them to. You're forced to awkwardly squeeze a freezing, sweating cup between your knees while double-clutching a manual transmission in a vehicle that bounces over speed bumps like a pogo stick. That isn't a morning commute. That is an extreme sport. The 1952 Felber Autoroller TL 400 is, objectively speaking, an atrocious car by any modern metric. It's slow, loud, smelly, painfully uncomfortable, and ridiculously dangerous, but is a rolling piece of history, a guaranteed provider of smiles, and a mechanical oddity. It is an absolute masterpiece. It reminds us of a simpler time when cars didn't need to connect to your smartphone or massage your lower back. They just needed to violently vibrate you from point A to point B while keeping a majority of your limbs inside the vehicle. So here is to the Felber Autoroller, the brave, smoky little Austrian bathtub that could. May its tiny 2-stroke engine forever scream into the void, and may its single front wheel never find a pothole it cannot conquer.